Welcome to the show. Today we are discussing why traditional marriage advice fails. So, this is a big complaint for many couples. Many couples will say, we went to couples therapy, we followed the advice of the therapist, and we're still stuck. Or we went to couples therapy and all we did was argue more and it made it worse. And actually, we think we are worse off than we were when we started. So, this is not uncommon. Now, my husband and I did several years of couples work together, but that wasn't the end all be all for us. And I'm a therapist and I'm very aware that there's a lot more that we need when we are working on our marriage than just talking back and forth with someone else. So, I want to discuss a little bit about why date nights, communication exercises, and scheduled intimacy, scheduled conversations, why those are not enough, and really what you need on a deeper level in order to really heal your marriage. Um, so, we're going to talk about why those don't work and what you really need in order to go deeper in the marital healing. So, look, a lot of times I will read in Facebook groups and also get DMs from people who are talking about things that they're doing. They're doing weekly date nights, they're trying communication techniques, they're scheduling intimacy, they're learning about the love languages, they're taking turns sharing feelings. And those are the things that I start with when I work with couples because most couples need some set of tools to be able to actually do the work, the deeper work. They need tools. So tools are things like how to have a conversation about a difficult topic, how to move through and process big emotions, how to get to know each other on a deeper level and be more vulnerable, how to share like your blueprint, the inner landscape of what's going on in your world. So these are things that I work with couples on in the very beginning. Also, opening up the space for the friendship to develop again, which might be things like having date nights, going day dates, spending time together, reading together, doing things like that. But for most couples who go to couples therapy, that's where it ends. And some of this strategy is also drawn from the Gottman work, which I am trained extensively in. But again, it's very skills based. It's not going to go deeper, which is really what couples need in order to have long lasting change in their marriage. So, the reason why most of these strategies and these tools used alone fall short is because they're addressing symptoms. They're actually not addressing the root cause. So you can learn communication skills all day long, but if there is still an emotional block or baggage that needs to be healed or a fracture in there, the communication skills are going to fall short. Number two, they also stay in the cognitive realm. They stay in your head. Now, if we're just in our head, we're not really addressing our felt experience and what's going on in our heart and how we're feeling in our body, which is the biggest piece of work that I do with my clients. So if you were to work with me one-on-one or in my women's group, much of the work we're doing is learning the language of the body and being able to communicate from that place because 80% of the communication going on inside of you is actually starting in your body and it's going up to your head. Only 20% starts in your head. So if you're only doing work that's cognitive and heady and intellectual, you're going to miss 80% of what's going on inside. Another reason why these strategies fall short is because they ignore a big component, which is one that I work with all my clients on, which is the nervous system response. The intellectual and cognitive approaches do not address the fight flight response going on in your body when you're having an argument with your spouse, when you've disappointed your spouse, and that's really killing you on the inside. So they don't address anything like that on a body level. They don't address nervous system repatterning. And most likely, you're also not really spending any time talking about your attachment style and how that's patterned into your nervous system and how that contributes to the way you relate to your partner and how that needs to shift, right? So And lastly, I would say is they don't really address the core reason about why there's a disconnect and distance in your marriage. And you really need to be able to get to that. You need to be able to get to the root cause, get to the core fears, clean it out at that space so that you can then build up from there. The work for couples is very, very foundational. So let's spend a little time right now just talking about some of these elements that I incorporate into my work that I know have made the work successful. After 25 years of practicing as a psychotherapist, I've really made lots of adjustments and refinements to my methods, to my process. And I would say over the last decade, probably, I have made a major shift in how I work with couples. And these are some of the things that we're incorporating. So let's just talk about the nervous system role, because this is something that is foundational to my work. So when we think about the nervous system role, so it's like if you're snapping at your partner or you're impatient with your kids, what that tells me is that your window of regulation, your window of tolerance in that moment is very tiny, which means you're being triggered. So if you're being triggered a lot in that moment, your window of tolerance or your window of regulation is very tiny. The goal there is you have to expand that window. It's not that you don't know how to be patient. It's not that you don't know how to talk to your partner without snapping at them. Of course you do. It's that there's something going on in your body, i.e., a fight flight response, that has created a small window of tolerance that means you're going to have less triggers. And until that gets addressed, you're going to constantly be reactive. This was a game changer for me in my personal life and in my marriage. And by far, I am not perfect, but I have a way now of being able to experience an incoming stimulus, create a space inside of me to reflect on that, and then make a conscious decision about how I'm going to respond. And that is because most of the time I'm walking around with a wide window of tolerance, which means there are less things that are going to come in above or below that. So that meaning that they're not going to trigger me. That's A. And B, I have learned to regulate my nervous system and my responses have been repatterned. So they are not as intense. And when you do this, you completely transform the things that really bug you and irritate you and agitate you and make you reactive. And it puts you in the driver's seat of your emotions and your responses. So I can't stress enough how powerful of a practice this is. Now, also, the other piece about the nervous system is logical solutions don't work because, as I said, only 20% of the communication starts in the brain. So you have to be able to speak the body's language. And the body's language is not logical, it is a felt experience, it is sensations. And we have to accurately decode those sensations. So my partner says something to me, and I get mad and I lash out. Now, if I decode that sensation, it might actually be that I'm not mad. It might be that I feel insecure and now I'm feeling anxious. And my way of pulling away is by getting mad. And so you could see how when your mind misreads the cues going on in your body, how you can take that dynamic with your partner far out into left field. When the reality is if you knew how you felt in that moment, you could pause and then you could say to your partner, like, ouch, that really cut deep. And your partner could have a decision about how they're going to respond as opposed to reacting in an angry way, lashing out with criticism or judgment. And then they react back to you. And now you're in an argument. When the reality is that they said something that triggered an insecurity in you, which is probably an old nervous system pattern and an old attachment wound. So look, marriage is an opportunity to heal your old attachment wounds. The first most important relationship you have in your life is the one with your primary caregiver. Most important and influential, I must say. The second most important and influential relationship you have in your life, it's that with your life mate. So everything that got stirred up in that first relationship is going to find its way into your second relationship if it hasn't been worked out yet. And if you are in a marriage with a good person, a solid person, one with integrity, one you trust, one who's open to growth, you will be able to heal all of these attachment wounds with the work of an expert. Of course, that's not a DIY piece of work. With the work of an expert, you will be able to heal all of those in the context of your relationship, which to me, it's one of the handful of beautiful reasons why I think it's really incredible to have a life partner to go through life with. Not only do we get to heal our old wounds and grow and become the best version of ourselves, but we actually get to go through life experiences with someone. The beautiful experiences that we get to share the joy with, and the painful experiences that we don't have to do alone. Okay. So, also, the other issue about why traditional marriage advice fails is because for many women that I work with, being vulnerable is really hard. And if we're just sitting there talking, doing talk therapy, it's very easy to just be in your head and intellectualize. And I will be the first one to raise my hand to tell you that that's what I did in many years of my therapy. I lived in my head. Because I did talk therapy with my therapist, I lived in my head. And it wasn't until I made a shift and started doing more somatic based therapy on my nervous system and body based work, meaning movement, that I really started to access a deeper level of my own healing and my own growth, which created the safety that my body needed in order to really be able to lean in and surrender in my relationship, my marriage, and in my life. And so that was not going to happen with talk therapy. So when we talk about these approaches, the traditional approaches to couples therapy, the other piece is that when we're doing a more unconventional approach, which is what I do, I am incorporating the cognitive piece because, as I said, 20% of the communication starts in your mind. But I'm also incorporating in a big way the somatic piece, the piece that starts in your body. And so this way we are dealing with what's called top down, which is the cognitive piece, and bottom up communication. We're doing communication from the mind to the body and communication from the body to mind. Now, what happens is when you and your partner get into something and you're triggered, you cannot talk your way out of that. And you can sit there with a talk therapist in a traditional talk therapy setting and try to talk about that. But a trigger is not rational. A trigger is something that happened then and there, and it's being repeated in the here and now. And so if you try to talk your way through it, you're going to continue to hit dead ends, because what you really have to do is you have to access in your body, in the felt experience, what was coming up for me? What was that about? And then you can be able to decide, okay, how am I going to respond? So if your partner says something to you, if you're living in your head, you're going to respond from an intellectual place. But if you are in touch with your body, you're going to tune in and say, where did that land? Where did that hit me? What is that about? Why do I feel this way? And you may not have all the answers to that, which is totally okay. All you need to be able to do is to say to your partner, ooh, that did not sit well with me. I am feeling very stirred up right now. So I think we need to have a conversation about this. Now, if you're in a relationship with someone where you can't do that, then there's some preliminary work. And as I said to you, the initial work that I do with couples is we do all of the skills work, okay? We're doing the skills work so that you can have these kinds of conversations with your partner. We're rebuilding the friendship. We're working on trust. As soon as we establish that foundation, though, we are going deep into the interpersonal dynamics, the felt experience that's happening between you and your partner, because that is where the work is. It's not in the reality. It's not in the what he said and she said. It's in how do I feel in your presence and how do I feel during this communication? And if I don't feel safe and I don't feel comfortable and I don't feel free, then that is what we have to work on. We have to clear out what's clogged up before you can have a two-way reciprocal dynamic with open communication, with intimacy, with connection, with closeness. Because the reality is why else be in a marriage if you can't have any of those things, right? So there are lots of exercises that you can do to get yourself in touch with this. And my one of my new freebies called Regulation Resources, that is something that you could download. I will put it in the show notes. You could download that. I give you a little bit of an introduction on how to use it. There's maybe 6 or 7 resources in there, which are practice resources. They are embodiment meditations. They are designed to work with your mind and your body, exactly what we're talking about. And you can use them as a way to start to expand your window window of tolerance, your window of regulation, so that you have less triggers and you can move through the feelings. The key here is you don't want to ignore the feelings. You don't want to shove them down when they come up. You want to tell yourself that you can be with them. This is how you develop self-trust in your ability and capacity to be with strong feelings and then move through them. And I will say that for me, with my anxiety that I struggled with for so long, I thought I was going to be stuck with this forever. But once I learned how to regulate and rewire my nervous system, it's not that I don't get anxious, but I don't get scared by that feeling. And whereas it used to be a 10 out of 10, now maybe it's a 3 or a 4. Sometimes it might be a 5, but it is far and few between. And I know how to work with it. So it is not scary. And I want that for you. I remember thinking back, like, wow, I can't wait to not have this feeling feel so visceral and so palpable. And I want that for everyone that I work with, to not be swallowed up by strong, strong feelings, especially anxiety, which can feel really, really debilitating, particularly when it comes to things that get triggered in your marriage. So that is it for today. Check out the show notes. There's lots of details down there for you, and I'll see you in the next episode.